Not all mornings are created equal, and the same could be said over here at the Living on the Verge podcast. This morning has not gone smoothly, and I don't know why. Nothing in particular is going on except for maybe the stars aren't aligned in my favor. I don't want to start off being a negative Nancy, lol, but I do want to be honest with you guys. I have been trying to get this recording done for almost an hour now, dedicated to my craft. And even though I have a million things to do this Labor Day weekend, just like you, I'm sure, I decided that I would get up and take care of my chores and fulfill my commitment to continue telling you about our beautiful European vacation. Only anything that could go wrong with regards to recording has gone wrong this morning. My mic stand broke. Luckily, I knew that was coming and I had ordered a new one, so it was just a matter of taking the time to replace. Then I decided I'm going to start the laundry and get things done for chore wise so that we could enjoy the rest of our weekend. And so I got that done pretty much without event. And then I came into the studio to record, having done all of the good things I was supposed to do, such as feed and water my dogs. And I sit down and the neighbor's gardener gets here. So, of course, we can't record over that because it's right outside of my window and it's incredibly loud and distracting to me. So, therefore, probably not fun for you guys. So, I wait that out, and in the meantime, I try to get a few more things done. Once the gardener leaves, I come back, sit down in the studio, start to record, and my dog is voraciously gulping water right on the other side of the studio door, and you can hear her loud and clear. So I hit pause. We're going to wait for that. Now I've lost my train of thought. So I have to start over again because I don't like the flow of what's going on. And honestly, it's just one of those mornings. I finally say, okay, I'm just going to power through. I will do whatever I need to do to get this done and get it behind me for the day so that we can move on. And I sit down, and we had recently gotten this wine refrigerator because we are quickly becoming wine collectors after the wine cruise. And it turns out our new wine fridge makes a pretty substantial noise when the motor is running, and it can be heard in the studio. So I had to wait that out. At least for now, and before my phone notifies me that the dryer is done, let me tell you a little bit about day 9, Sunday, on the Amalfi Coast, docking at the port of Sorrento in Italy. This port had a lot to offer. I was conflicted even when we were looking at the planning and the excursions offered at this port. You really have no concept of what you're coming into, but I could tell by the number of excursions offered that this was going to be a busy area. And indeed it was. Well, many of you have heard of the Amalfi Coast as the, famous and rich destination for the summer. And, it's just a beautiful place to be. When we docked, honestly, it was breathtaking. The view from the tender to the land was just gorgeous. So we started off taking the tender, and you could spend the day in Sorrento, which was the little town we had docked by. You could go to Positano, which was an excursion and a choice that had to be commuted to. You could go to the Pompeii ruins, also an excursion, or you could go to Capri, also an excursion and not within walking distance. All 4 of these options were available, but we only had one day, so people had to make choices, and as such, we kind of disband. Our little group, the band had broken up for the day, and So I'll tell you a little bit about Sorrento, which is where our friends Nancy and Greg went. And they said they had a really nice day and it was a lovely little town. And Nancy really enjoyed the shopping. So let me tell you a little bit about Sorrento, a coastal town in southwestern Italy facing the Bay of Naples on the Sorrentine Peninsula. Perched atop cliffs that separate the town from its busy marinas, it's known for sweeping water views and Piazza Tasso, a cafe-lined square. The historic center is a warren of narrow alleys that's home to the Chiesa di San Francesco, a 14th century church with a tranquil cloister. Sorrento is special for its dramatic cliffside setting with stunning views of the Bay of Naples and Mount Vesuvius, its famous lemon groves, limoncello liquor, as well as a rich culture of local crafts such as woodwork and lacework. So, if you were spending the day in Sorrento, I understand it was very relaxing, very lovely. The beauty of not just the topography, not just the architecture, but how it all kind of fit together. And it was everything that you picture in those gorgeous paintings that you see of Italy and of the Amalfi Coast. That's where we were. It was mind blowing. So the other option would have been to head into Positano. Let me tell you a little bit about Positano. It's a cliffside village on southern Italy's Amalfi Coast, well-known holiday destination with pebble beachfronts and steep, narrow streets lined with boutiques and cafes. Its Chiesa di Santa Maria Assunta features a Majolica tiled dome, a 13th century Byzantine icon of the Virgin Mary. Really, really interesting. We had a couple of friends that went there, and honestly, at this point, there was a lot of planning going on for the future. People were planning future cruises. Everybody was just kind of kumbayaing. So there wasn't a lot of exchanging of, hey, what'd you do today? And tell me in detail about this, that, and the next, like it was earlier in the trip. I guess when conversations were a little bit more surface, for lack of a better expression. And honestly, I felt that the people that went to Positano thought it was gorgeous. And I think there was one couple that we talked to. Oh, yes, it was Kathy and Tom. They had taken a bike ride from Sorrento to Positano, which is quite a ways and kind of shows how outdoorsy they are compared to me, who my idea of exploring the island was to walk around the cafes and the boutiques and the churches and all of the other, museums and things. But it just, it made me realize that there are so many different ways that people vacation. So I know they went to Positano, and I think Terry went to Positano too. I could be wrong, but that's what I remember in my head. Anyway, let me move on and tell you a little bit about the other option. Now, this option was the option that our friends Daniel and Susan chose, and they got really lucky and were able to get on a private tour to the Pompeii ruins. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Explore the superbly preserved remains of ancient Pompeii, an UNESCO World Heritage Site, fabled Pompeii, a Roman town buried under ash and pumice by the catastrophic Mount Vesuvius eruption of AD 79. As you walk through the remains of the Forum, private homes and shops, you'll gain a clear picture of daily life nearly 2,000 years ago. Marvel at frescoes and mosaics adorning largely intact villas, and observe everyday objects scattered about, nearly undisturbed since the classical era. You'll feel as if time has frozen here, especially when you see the haunting plaster casts of victims caught in their life's final moments. Stop at inlaid woodworking workshops on the way back, a delicate art form that exemplifies the victory over adversity in this joyous region. The history of this location is bone chilling. To me, the notion that this eruption just stopped an entire city and froze it in time that way is a little bit eerie, if I'm being honest, which is why I really did not have any interest in visiting this site until our friends got back and told us about it. And then I kind of had FOMO, I'm not going to lie. So I'll definitely put this location back on my list when I am next back at the Amalfi Coast. Just sitting here telling you guys about this is really making me long for that day and a couple more to enjoy and explore this gorgeous area. But I'm going to tell you about how we spent our day, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the gorgeous island of Capri. Capri is an island in Italy's Bay of Naples, is famed for its rugged landscape, upscale hotels and shopping, from designer fashions to limoncello and handmade leather sandals. One of its best-known natural sights is the Blue Grotto, a dark cavern where the sea glows electric blue, the result of sunlight passing through an underwater cave. In summer, Capri's dramatic cove-studded coastline draws many yachts. We were there in summer, and I'll tell you all about it in just a few minutes. But first, let me tell you about our actual excursion and how the day was supposed to unfold. We disembarked at the port, took a tender across to the little town of Sorrento, and then we had to meet at a particular location. Once at that location, we met our tour guide and we were given tickets, and we hung out and had some water and kind of hung out and waited for our jet foil to take us across the Bay of Naples. I had never been on a jet foil, and I was really excited about that. It was really cool. It's kind of ferry-esque, and thank goodness there was a place to sit inside and it was air conditioned. You could buy a t-shirt or a tote bag or a alcoholic beverage or a soft drink, and the 30-minute ride was pretty cool. I mean, it was neat. There was not a lot of moving around or feeling seasick. I was a little concerned about that because I have a tendency to not do really well on small boats, but this was really fun. And we had run into new friends, Kim and her family, which consisted of her son Tyler, his wife Lauren, and her daughter Emily. And we kind of just hung out with them, in particular on the jet foil. And while we were waiting for the jet foil, it was really funny because somebody came up to me and apologized on behalf of essentially the entire state that Patricia lives in for her behavior. I guess word had gotten back to them about how she behaved, and they had had an incident of their own with said woman. So they were very apologetic and wanted to make very, very clear that they were not really good friends with this person, did not come with them on this vacation, and please don't associate me with them. And of course, I would never have done that, but it was just funny to me that it was even a, topic of conversation. Until, lo and behold, I turn around and who but who happened to be in our group? Patricia. Listen, everybody in our group was going to make a conscious effort to lose this broad. We just were. We didn't even have to talk about it. It was funny, a little bit awkward, but by then everybody had the resolve and the wherewithal to realize that this was our vacation and we weren't going to let any nonsense get in the way of it. So eventually we did catch our jet foil. We headed across the gorgeous Bay of Naples and to the absolutely pristine, breathtaking island of Capri, or Capri, potato, you say it the way you would like to. And so we exit the jet foil and you can just see the entire town inlaid across the bay. And so you have to kind of walk around, but the photo ops, the picture moments, just walking from there to the little buses that we were going to board. And when I say little, I'm not kidding. It was just a really good moment to take gorgeous photos and kind of take in the ambiance. So I was fascinated and living my very best life at that moment as we made our way to these little buses. I think there were enough seats for 20 people per bus. And so we had to take two for our group. And if I remember correct, it could have been a few more, but these buses were tiny. And you don't really understand why all of a sudden everything shrinks until you get on the road and head up. So the first part of our excursion was to head to Capri, which is at the top of Capri. And the bus that we had to take, I kid you not, when you're sitting down on your bottom, your knees cannot fit because of the proximity of the seat in front of you. I had to sit kind of at an angle and kind of sit stand for the entirety of the trip. The streets are so narrow and the drivers are so aggressive that in of itself is part of the adventure of this excursion. Can we get up this hill without A, falling over the side cliff, or B, running into another bus, a motorcyclist, or a pedestrian, because the roads are windy. There are blind spot mirrors every few feet because you need them. And there's definitely an etiquette. So I do not think I would ever find myself driving in Capri just because of how aggressive it is and how dangerous it looked. So for me, it was a beautiful scenic ride up the mountain. I videotaped, kind of ignored the dooming cliff that was, a few feet away from where I was taping. And at one point, I kid you not, we skinned another a car coming the other way, going around a curve. Both my husband and I kind of looked at each other and said, "Did you feel that little bump?" And it was just a little scrape, but nonetheless, we collided with another vehicle going up that hill to Capri. They let you off at the top at this kind of little plateau area, and you can see that there is a chairlift that goes really, really far up, and that is the chairlift that takes you up to the Mount Monte Solado, which is the highest place in Capri at 1,884 feet. We talked about that a little bit. And so when you got off, you had the option to either have 30 to 45 minutes of walking around time in town, or you could take a ticket and take the chairlift. Well, it looked pretty steep and pretty gnarly, and I was very willing to try it. However, it was really hot. And so at that moment, I just wanted to have a limoncello. I was in Capri, and that's what I wanted. And I was hungry, so maybe a salad or something. And so we took our tickets to take the chairlift, but thought, well, if we have enough time on the way back, we'll do it then. For now, let's explore a little bit of Capri, because when else are we ever going to be here? Our friends that we were with decided to kind of break off into groups. And I think Emily and Kim took the chairlift, and Lauren and Tyler headed into a different direction in town. We ended up walking around, and the first thing that struck me was this beautiful, beautiful hotel called the Capri Palace Hotel and Spa. So I kind of took a few pictures and gave it a quick look-see and decided one of these days when I get rich and famous, I'm coming back and staying here. So before recording this podcast, I did a little bit of research and I looked up the hotel so that I could give you guys the information. You guys, I don't think I'm ever really going to be staying there. The rooms start for a regular room at $1,052 a night and go all the way up to almost $12,000 a night for their 1,600 square foot presidential suite. A little bit out of my reach, but a girl could dream. So this place was gorgeous. There would be a restaurant and then a storefront And then if you looked kind of behind it and down the hill a little, there would be a home and somebody's, clothesline with their laundry and their little garden with their tomatoes. And I mean, it was just beautiful. Something to see everywhere you looked. And for us, we were headed to find something to eat. So we ended up at this little bar, I guess bar slash restaurant. It was called Bar Columbus. And the intent was to go in and have like a limoncello or a sangria or something, and something light to eat, because later on in our excursion we were actually going to be taken to a gorgeous restaurant with the view, so we didn't want to eat too much because we knew we were going to be eating again. And we happened upon this place, and the gentleman seemed nice enough. They had like a daily special where you could pick between a few items and it came with a drink. Well, we were deceived. It didn't come with a drink. It came with a water or a soft drink, I believe it was. And if you wanted to have a drink, it was going to be extra. Well, after drinking the water and kind of rehydrating, we realized, you know what? We don't need to have a lot of alcohol in our system. It's hot out here. We still have a lot of day left. Let's just enjoy. So we had a little bit of a light bite, and we had a gorgeous view there. It was a nice opportunity to get out of the heat for a little while and get off of our feet. And we were at the tippy top of the island, able to see the entire Amalfi Coast. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was a clear, beautiful, breathtaking day. And so we knew we didn't have a ton of time and we wanted to explore town a little bit. And we walked along the little boutiques and down the little square. I was looking for maybe some beautiful bottle of limoncello or something that I could bring back to specifically remind me of Capri. But I knew that my real target was heading over to Via Camarel in Capri, where it's, designer heaven. So I wasn't too disappointed. We did not end up going on the chairlift, but we ended up walking over to meet up with our friends. They had gone on a chairlift, and Kim told us that she is not at all afraid of heights. In fact, she lives in a high rise back home. But even she got a little creeped out because your legs are dangling underneath you and the chair feels a little, rickety. Well, she and Emily did it. They had a great time. They were, happy that they did, but there was not much up there except a view. And so they came back down, and Tyler and Lauren had shopped and bought these really cool street numbers for their new home. And that kind of set me on a mission to do the same thing. Problem was, we only had about 10 minutes left, so I knew it wasn't going to happen. And I quickly abandoned the mission in favor of another cold water. And we met back up with our tour guide, and we were off and on our way back down to Capri. So back in the buses, at this point, somebody almost got run over in the middle of the street, reaffirmed my notion and decision to never, ever drive in Capri. And once down in Capri, we were given some time to hang out, and then we were going to meet back and have this lunch. So sure enough, we walked around. We took some gorgeous pictures. I'll post them on my Instagram. And then we walked over to have this lunch. We met back up with our new friends after the photo ops, walked over to this gorgeous coastal seaside cliff restaurant called Ristorante da Giorgio. And Anna Maria was the nonna who was in the kitchen, honestly making food, running the ship. At one point, I tried to get her to pose for a photo, and she, in her very, Sicilian, curt way, said, no photos of me, only of the restaurant. I have it on video, so I'll post that too. She was adorable. Well, apparently, Anna Maria is known for her grilled octopus and her spaghetti alla gitrio. Well, we didn't have either. We ordered pizza and limoncellos. The limoncello was delicious. I mean, chef's kiss, delicious. And the pizza was beautiful. Everything was relatively priced considering we were in Capri. I honestly expected it to be a little bit more expensive. And maybe if we would have had, mains, like dinner entrees, it might have been. But I thought everything was just fabulous. We were able to get out of the heat. We had gorgeous views while we enjoyed. The music was nice. The servers were amazing. Just great attitudes. This place was gorgeous. Good vibe, good food, good people. And we stayed for a while, and then we knew we had about an hour before we had to be back to the cable car, which would take us back down into the jet foil to head back to Sorrento. Well, they dropped us off right near this designer alley, if you will, and I was in hog heaven. The first thing I saw was like there was a Bottega store, and then there was a Prada store, and Ferragamo, Valentino, Chanel, on and on and on. And it was kind of at a downhill angle. So I knew that we had to walk back uphill, and we were probably going to be holding some bags. We stopped at Prada, and I really wanted to get a Louis Vuitton. But I had no concept of how far we were from the Louis store, and I knew that I had limited time. So I went into Prada thinking that I would find something there, and I didn't. So onward and upward with the search. Well, we ended up at a watch store. My husband loves watches. We were able to hold and look at this gorgeous Monte Carlo numbered classic watch. It was a Tag Heuer, and this thing cost $165,000. So obviously we did not buy it, but the store itself was gorgeous. The guy was really cool. He told us all about it. And we were off in search of the Louis store. Well, around the corner, down the bend a little ways, and the Louis store. I walked in, and I knew that I wanted to get something, but I knew that I did not want to spend a lot of money on another handbag. My husband, on the other hand, said I had a birthday coming up, and when else was I going to be able to say that I had bought a handbag on the island of Capri in Italy at the Louis Vuitton store? Well, suffice to say, his argument beat mine, and I am a proud owner of a gorgeous handbag from the Louis Vuitton store in Capri, Italy. Now, one thing that really ticked me off, I was able to secure the highly touted cherry bag to carry my Louis back, and it was in the other orange Louis bag. What I did not notice until we got back on the ship was that they had not given me a Louis box. I was not happy. And in fact, it reminds me that I need to call the local Louis Vuitton store and find out if they could ship me a box, because who sells somebody a high-end handbag without the box? It had the dust bag, but then the dust bag was inside of a Louis bag. Why they did that, I have no idea. Nonetheless, they did that, and I was very, very disappointed. But we're running out of time in Capri, folks. We got to catch the cable car to head on back down, to catch the hydrofoil, to catch the tender, to get back on the cruise. And when I talk about planes, trains, and automobiles, it was that kind of a day. So we ended up getting in line for the cable car that was going to take us back down. And this was the least favorable part of my day. I did not realize that I struggled with, issues of confinement. I wouldn't call it plain old claustrophobia, but I don't like being in big crowds with no way out. And this was like the subway station from hell. It was all stairs, and you had to head down into this depot. There was no exit, no way out once you got in there. People were literally, arm to arm, leg to leg, sticky to stickiness. And luckily, Lauren, who I understand doesn't even like being a touchy feely kind of a person, decided that she was going to have my back and shadowed me the entire time with my husband at the other side and Kim right behind her. So I was pretty well protected and flanked. At one point, Emily and Tyler broke ahead. And anyway, it was 30 minutes of our life we could never get back, waiting to get in that cable car for a 10-minute ride down the side of the mountain, which was pretty to look at, I guess. It felt like we were packed like sardines. There were a couple of seats, but most people had to stand. I was in the group of standers, and I was a little nervous because it's such close quarters, and I had my Louis Vuitton bag and my, my little wallet bag that I was carrying around and whatever else we had bought. And so it didn't make for the most comfortable return trip, but we all agreed that we would have rather had another 30 minutes in Capri and spent however much it cost to have taken a taxi down the hill rather than that cable car. But what's done is done. So back on the jet foil across the gorgeous Bay of Naples to the tender, from Sorrento back onto the cruise ship. And that was the conclusion of our gorgeous and unforgettable day in Capri. I really, really had fun listening to what everybody else did. But like I said earlier, we weren't really getting into deep specifics. I do know that my friends Susan and Daniel had an amazing time exploring the ruins of Pompeii. And as such, it now is something on my list when I get back there because, again, I had FOMO, but this day was gorgeous. And this was the night that we were going to have our farewell dinner. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a story with regards to the farewell dinner. I'm sorry, it wasn't a farewell dinner. It was a reception and a cocktail reception with past hors d'oeuvres. And it was going to be at the Horizons Bar, which was where everything started and where we had our welcome reception. By this time, everybody knew each other. The first people that we saw were Kathy and Tom that we had had dinner with at Toscana. And then, of course, I ran into Susan and Daniel. And by this time, we already had our group and our seats were already always kind of laid out. And, everybody had saved a seat for so-and-so and so-and-so. And everybody was mingling because they knew each other now and toasting here and chatting there and hugging there and exchanging phone numbers here. And it was the melancholy moment that we all thought it was going to be. But at one point, they got up and you may remember I talked about the exercise that they had as kind of a mixer at the opening reception, and whereby you had to go around and introduce yourself and get people to sign your spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. Well, they got up and spoke. Dan Stevenson, the owner of Europa Wineries, got up and thanked everyone and talked a little bit about the history of these Europa wine cruises with what had now become somewhat of a family. And then Dr. Doug got up and spoke a little, very briefly. And then they called our friend Nancy up to pick the winners of a few cases of wine that were the result of those people who had participated in the survey. In the game at the beginning. Well, apparently the game had gotten out of control and there were no real clear winners. So what they decided to do instead was put everybody's name into a bowl and pick 3 random staterooms to win 1 case of wine each. And our friend was going to announce the winners. And so she picks out one name and out a second name. And oh my gosh, the third name was the stateroom of, you guessed it, Patricia. So this woman that had tortured this woman for the entirety of the cruise, well, not really the entirety, but she kind of got under her skin and definitely had earned a name for herself, albeit the name being not a favorable one. Now she has to hand her a case of wine. Well, I don't think she was there. And if she was, I don't remember it being an incident or a moment. But there was some irony to it, a few chuckles amongst our group. And at the end of the day, we all laughed it off to it being a farewell gift, because later on that evening, I was headed to meet with the gal to sign up for a future cruise. And I needed to leave the deposit. If you are on a cruise and you are having a great time and you want to go on another cruise, then you better put that deposit for the cruise while you are on board, because the amount of perks that you get for doing that is far more than anything you're going to get once you leave that cruise ship. So we were getting ready to go to dinner, but before we did that, I wanted to stop and leave my deposit. And on the way there, I ran into Per, who was the owner of the travel agency and the coordinator along with Europa for this cruise. And at that point, there had been kind of a general knowledge that Patricia had become uninvited on any future cruises, but I wasn't sure. So when I ran into Per, I said, I'm on my way to pay for a deposit on a future cruise, but I just wanted to let you know that I will not ever travel again with your group if Patricia is a part of the group. And so I just want to make sure. And he said, it is a non-issue. There is nothing to worry about. And then the lady that books the cruises said, is this one okay to book for a future cruise? And he said, this one is VIP. And he gave me a big smile. And my husband, Susan and I kept walking over to fill out the paperwork to get me on the next cruise. So, I guess our group had the last laugh. This woman thought she was going to be an issue for all of these people. And, she took some moments away from what was otherwise an amazing vacation. But everybody else had the last laugh, because that's the last you'll ever hear about Patricia when it comes to Europa vacations, as far as I know. Well, that's not the last you're going to hear from me, because I still have to tell you about what we did after we disembark, which sadly is tomorrow. We ended up having a few more cocktails and then all heading over to the Grand Buffet for a very melancholy but jovial dinner. Of course, we headed over to Martini's, but everybody had to pack because we had to have our suitcases out in the hallway by, I think it was 10 o'clock that night or something like that. And then we had to be off the ship, depending on what time you selected, no later than 9:30 in the morning. So, all good things must come to an end. And even though I didn't want this cruise to come to an end, I was excited to explore something at my own pace without having to be told what time to be back on the ship. And even though I wouldn't change anything that I did except for maybe Pozzallo, I really, really wanted the ability to kind of march to my own drummer for a couple of days. And that's what was going to happen. So I will be back tomorrow to talk to you about our fabulous day in Rome and our beautiful experience at Vatican City. I hope you're enjoying this super summer series episode of our European vacation. And I hope you're having an amazing Labor Day weekend. It's hot out there, folks, so drink some water, stay safe wherever you are, and I'll be back very soon with another episode. Until then, I'll be here doing my chores, getting my errands done, fighting with my dogs, and living on the verge.